school. And the way that you do this, right, is, maybe you have like the top line. So this could be like APIs or like RESTful design, right? And then from here, it's, okay, what are the topics under REST, right? So maybe the first thing would be like resources and a definition of what a resource is. So, we could say like web applications are organized around resources, which are kind of like the organizational unit. This being a little repetitive, but I almost want to use the word like the objects / tables consisting of a website. And then maybe you give an example. So for example, if it's Facebook, right, what does it have? You can think of like posts as a resource, users maybe as a resource, even something like friendships, as a resource. These are probably, when we get to tables, some of the underlying tables that make up something like Facebook. And we saw this, just to review, like we saw this with ESPN, right, where we saw /NHL/teams, right, was a resource. /NHL/players, right, was another resource. Okay? So the resource would be players, and then this is the path or the URL. Okay? And then from here, under RESTful design, there's basically two different kinds of requests, right? So what are the two different kinds of requests? Right? We have GET requests, okay, and POST requests. And now we want to know what are each, like what's the difference between these. So GET requests do not change the underlying data, right? For example, if we do something like /user/1, right? Maybe make what's called a GET request to /user/1. This would not change the user. We're just getting back that information. Whereas a POST request does change it. For example, you could make a POST request there's a certain kind of POST request like deleting a user, say /users/1. And then there's another POST request to say like create a user, which generally would be like post/users. Okay? So this is, you don't have to know these really unless you're doing web development. But the idea, they almost make sense. It's like if we're going to make a POST request, we want to make to create a user. We're making a POST request to what resource? Well, /users, you may think that it would be like /users/12, but this user 12 doesn't exist yet, right? We're asking to create it. So you would, first basically ask the pool of resources, like this user's pool, to please create a new instance, a new user. All right, so that's why it would be like post/users. Here, if you're deleting a specific user, right, that would be like a POST request about this guy, this specific user. All right, so you can see how these are descriptive. And then if we want to get all the users, right, the get /users, right? Okay, so these are the main things. What's nice is, you can think about, when we saw that if we went to something like ESPN.com and then you search, sorry about the distraction, and then you search, right, Steph Curry, right, then we have like the query parameters, and normally we set our query parameters start with the question mark, right? And then you'd have the key value pair, so something like Q equals. So this might be the next thing, and then I do want to query parameters begin with a question mark, so /users question mark, and then maybe you would do like name equals Steph Curry. One thing to point out, this like this stuff, the %20, that's just used for the browser to like interpret a space, to like translate a space to %20. But typically when you're writing in Python and interacting with an API, you can just use the space normally. You don't need the %20. So anyway, this is right. The next step would be like query parameters. And then a nice thing to think about is, okay, what would this translate to in Python? So let's say we had a list of dictionaries. How would this translate? So you can almost start to think about like Python. So it would be, for user in users or for player in players. Right? Return the player where the player name equals Steph Curry, right? So it's like now you can start to think about like how my /users requests like might translate under the hood if we were writing this in Python. Okay. So the point of this is now you kind of have, an idea of how to organize your thoughts around this. The people who, like I'll send out a reading on how, not right now, but because I want you all to be able to complete the lab, but I'll send out a reading soon on how to make a good outline. And, as we said, you really want to focus on like technical communication and being able to communicate your thoughts clearly, not only because it makes you a good coworker, but because, in interviews, most of the questions we see are actually more verbal than actual hands on the keyboard coding. There's both, but especially in the earlier rounds, a lot of it is verbal communication. And being able to talk, right, in a organized manner, right, show like speaking in a structured manner shows that you're thinking in a structured manner. Okay? And even that, right, has value. So the way to do that is to actually think in a structured manner, right? And for me and for a lot of people, writing an outline, creating this throughout the course pays a lot of dividends, all right? So we'll go through the lab, but the reason why I wanted to introduce this now is that so that you can start thinking about, how to take notes on this material as you move through it. That makes sense? Say yes. Okay. So let me